Right. Okay. So this is Jeff Coleman, and we're on part three of our four-part series. We're talking now about the fact and significance of Jesus' resurrection. So we've talked about the fact and significance of Jesus' death, and this is number three. All right. So, in focusing on the fact of Jesus' resurrection, we're going to look at the biblical account, similar to what we did for the death of Jesus. And then we're going to look at the historicity of Jesus' resurrection, whether it really happened, focusing on four minimal facts, six possible theories, and whether the apostles' testimony can be, or whether it's credible. All right, so let's go back to that morning. We left off with the women waiting or resting on the Sabbath and waiting until Sunday morning to where they could come and resume caring for Jesus' dead body with spices. And so before sunrise, an angel rolls away the stone from Jesus' tomb. This is Matthew 28, 2-4. And so this happens before sunrise, and the women who follow Jesus, they visit Jesus' tomb and discover that he's missing. This is mentioned in all four Gospels. Mary Magdalene then leaves to go tell Peter and John, according to John 20:1-2. Meanwhile, the other women are remaining at the tomb, and they see two angels who tell them about the resurrection. This is recorded in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Peter and John, hearing from Mary Magdalene about the empty tomb, run, and you recall that John is faster and he gets there first, but he doesn't go in, and Peter gets there second and goes in and sees that it is empty. And this is according to Luke 24 and John 20. So Mary Magdalene follows them. She returns to the tomb, and Jesus appears to her alone in the garden. So this is the first person that Jesus shows himself to, and this is in Mark 16 and John 20. This is Jesus' first appearance, and you'll see that there are 10 appearances. Then Jesus appears to the other women, Mary, the mother of James, Salome, and Joanna. And this is in Matthew 28, 8-10. And this is Jesus' second appearance. And then those who guarded Jesus' tomb, they go and report to the Jewish leaders that the angel rolled away the stone. And so then they're bribed to tell a lie, to say that Jesus' disciples stole the body, verses 11-15 of Matthew 28. Meanwhile, Jesus appears to Peter. We don't know about this appearance in the Gospels, but we do find it in 1 Corinthians 15:5. It says that he was buried and that he was raised on the third day in accordance with the scriptures, and that he appeared to Cephas, then to the 12. So that's how we know that this appearance happened on this first Sunday from 1 Corinthians 15. So this is Jesus' third appearance. And then that afternoon, the famous Road to Emmaus encounter, where Jesus appears to two men, disciples other than the 12, on the road to Emmaus. And this is Jesus' fourth appearance. This is mentioned in Mark 16 and Luke 24. That evening, Jesus, or the two disciples from Emmaus, they tell the others that they saw Jesus in Luke 24, and then Jesus appears to the 10 with Thomas absent in the upper room. And we're saying 12, so we're saying that Matthias, who was later to become the 12th apostle, was there as well. So Jesus appeared to the 10 apostles with Thomas missing in the upper room, Luke 24 and John 20. This is Jesus' fifth appearance. So 5 appearances on that first day. A week later, the disciples are gathered in the upper room again, and Jesus appears to all of them, including Thomas, and Thomas believes. John 20, 26 to 28. This is Jesus' 6th appearance. And then in the next 32 days, Jesus will appear 4 more times. The first time is to the 7 disciples gathered at the Sea of Galilee, where there's a miracle of fish, and Jesus restores Peter and tells him, feed my lambs, feed my sheep. And this is important because after this meeting with the 7 disciples at the Sea of Galilee, a large conference on the top of a mountain will happen in Galilee. And this includes over 500 people on the mountain in Galilee. So this is where the Great Commission happens, Matthew 28, 16 to 20. And Paul mentions this in 1 Corinthians 15, 6, when Jesus appeared to more than 500 brothers at one time. There's a debate whether that brothers is exclusive or inclusive of any sisters that would have been there. So it could have been much more than 500 people. But this is Jesus' 8th appearance. And again, this is the Great Commission. And then after this, Jesus appears to his half-brother James. We know about this from 1 Corinthians 15, 7. Then he appeared to James, and then to all the apostles. So James was his brother, and this is when James would have believed finally that his brother was the Messiah and that he had risen from the dead. This is the 9th appearance. And then the last appearance that we know of, because there could always be more, but these are the ones we know of. Jesus appeared to all of the apostles at Jerusalem, Luke 24 and Acts 1, and he instructed them and told them about how the gospel would spread from Judea to from Jerusalem to Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. And it was at that time, 40 days after Jesus rose from the dead, that's when he ascended, and he ascended from the Mount of Olives east of Jerusalem while the disciples looked on. So we have 10 appearances of Jesus recorded in the Gospels, Acts, and 1 Corinthians 15. So this is the biblical record. Now, did this actually happen? As I mentioned this morning, there are 4 minimal facts that all historians agree upon that really aren't in dispute at all. Number 1, Jesus died on the cross and was buried in a tomb. Number 2, Jesus' tomb was empty and no one ever produced his body. Number 3, over 500 people, including the apostles, believed that they saw Jesus risen from the dead. So that is interesting. Notice how it's worded. It doesn't say the fact isn't that they did see him. The fact is that they believed they saw him. And this is over 500 people. And then fact number 4, the lives of the apostles, Jesus' brothers, James and Jude, and also Saul, were dramatically changed as a result of their belief that Jesus rose from the dead. So whatever theory we go with on Jesus' resurrection, it has to basically explain all 4 of these minimal facts. This is a key argument for the resurrection. And all of these are uncontroverted by historians, whether they're believers or unbelievers. So there have been 6 theories developed, 6 main theories of how to explain the resurrection. You see them here. The first theory is that Jesus didn't really die. He swooned, he fainted on the cross, he appeared to be dead, but he really wasn't. He was buried in the tomb, and then sometime maybe on the Sabbath or early on Sunday morning, he was able to kind of gather himself up and fold the face cloth and somehow get the stone pushed away, and was able to come out. And then he appeared to the women and the apostles over a period of days. This is one theory. I'm not really going to go into the details of why these theories are not very strong. I'll let you kind of think about them based on these four minimal facts here. Another theory is the conspiracy theory. This theory says that the disciples formed a conspiracy, formed a story that basically Jesus rose from the dead. To do this, they would have had to somehow overpower the soldiers. They would have had to open the tomb. They would have had to steal the body and hide it somewhere so it could never be found, and hold that conspiracy basically to the end of their lives without telling anyone, or without anyone giving up the big secret. There's many problems with this theory, that there's a conspiracy. The next theory is that there was a big hoax, that someone who looked like Jesus appeared to the disciples and others, and he was just a really good impersonator of Jesus. Many problems with this. First of all, it doesn't explain the empty tomb. Also, the apostles were with Jesus for 3 years. It would be very difficult to basically throw them all off, and basically impersonate someone that they lived with for 3 years. You have James, who was Jesus' own brother, and if there's anyone who could tell it was a false Jesus, it would have been James, and so on. So this really, and who would be motivated to play such a hoax, and why would they even do such a thing? So not very credible at all. Then there's the hallucination theory. This is the idea that the apostles, when they were gathered together, they saw a group hallucination. The problems with this are they saw Jesus 10 times, all together. If we put them all together, there's 10 occasions. So, that if it was a one-time thing where they had a group vision, maybe that might, but here we've got 10 appearances of Jesus. So also group hallucinations don't really happen. That's not how the real world works. And it doesn't explain the empty tomb as well. So we have to say no to the hallucination theory. The next theory is the myth or legend theory. This says that Jesus didn't really rise from the dead. It was just like maybe 50 to 100 years later, Christian, well-meaning but gullible Christians started to believe that in this myth that Jesus rose from the dead because it gave them hope and solace and comfort, with the belief that he was going to come again or something like that. This theory is really not good, because the apostles immediately began to preach the resurrection as soon as it happened, as on the day of Pentecost. I mean, it was the central teaching, the central proof that Jesus was the Messiah. And when Saul was converted on the road to Damascus, he immediately began to preach the resurrection of Jesus. So this wasn't some periphery belief of the early Christians. This was the central belief that Jesus had risen from the dead. So it wasn't a myth or legend developed several decades later. So we have to say no to all 5 of these theories. And the last theory is that the resurrection actually happened, even though resurrections typically don't happen. Nevertheless, the best explanation of the evidence in this case is that Jesus really did rise from the dead, and that we should believe the apostles. So that leads us to the final consideration: is, are the apostles credible? Are they telling the truth when they say that Jesus rose from the dead? Well, you have to look at bias, and you have to look at their motive, just as you would with any witness in any trial. And the apostles really didn't have a reason to lie about Jesus' resurrection. They had every reason to deny this story of Jesus' resurrection, because they had, they were basically ostracized from their own people. They faced suffering and persecution for decades, and because of their preaching that Jesus had risen. So they really didn't have anything to gain by lying or making up a story. The apostles themselves doubted the resurrection themselves. They weren't expecting it, even though Jesus had talked about it. They show almost no signs of expecting Jesus to rise from the dead. And when the women came and told them, they doubted. And they continued to doubt until they touched Jesus himself and ate with him on Sunday evening in the upper room. So the apostles weren't out to make up a story. They themselves were skeptical. All but John died precisely because they proclaimed Jesus' resurrection. And this was a central teaching of the apostles, and all they had to do to get the suffering and persecution to stop was say, hey, it's all a lie. We're sorry. We want to be good Jews again. They didn't do that. They until their death all knew that they had seen the risen Jesus, and they were happy to die for it because they knew it was true. They knew what they saw and heard. And finally, there's no evidence that they actually gained anything like what normal human beings seek when they're making up a story: money, sex, power, or prestige. This didn't motivate the apostles. What motivated them was that the Lord that they had followed for 3 years, that they believed in, had actually risen from the dead, and they were willing to stake it all on that truth. So the apostles come off as very, very credible, and their story should be believed. So we've now finished our part number 3, the fact of Jesus' resurrection. And when we come back, we'll do our last session on the significance of Jesus' resurrection.